At dinner, my sister dumped wine on me and screamed that I had until sunrise to get out of her house. My parents cheered. I only smiled, put a key on the table, and told them they had 60 seconds. It happened at Thanksgiving, right when the room was full of food smells and forced family smiles. Everyone was sitting close together, elbows near plates, pretending the tension was not there. The turkey had just been carved. The mashed potatoes were passed around. Someone had already started arguing about politics, and then quickly stopped because nobody wanted a real fight yet. Belle did not stop. My sister Belle stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. Her face looked tight and bright at the same time, like she had been holding anger for days and finally found a safe place to explode. She picked up her glass of Cabernet, the dark red kind, and poured the whole thing onto my chest in one hard motion. The wine went through my white Oxford shirt in seconds. It was cold. It shocked my skin. It spread across my chest like a deep stain, almost like blood. It dripped down to my belt and soaked in my jeans. It smelled sharp and sweet and sour all at once. Belle slammed the empty glass down on the table. She hit it so hard the stem cracked. A thin line of glass ran through the base like a spider web. Then she screamed so loud the whole room heard her clearly. She screamed that I had until sunrise to get out of her house. People should have gasped. People should have tried to calm her down. People should have asked what was wrong. Instead, my parents clapped. They actually clapped like they were watching a show. My mother smiled wide. Her eyes shined with pride like Belle had just done something brave and smart. Mom told Belle, "Well done, sweetie." She sounded pleased, like Belle had won a prize. My father laughed. He gave that heavy laugh he usually saved for football games and jokes that hurt someone else. He said it was about time someone put me in my place. I looked down at my shirt. I watched the stain grow bigger as the wine spread. I felt cold drops slide down my stomach. My hand stayed still. My face stayed calm. Then I looked up. All three of them were smiling. Satisfied. Proud. Like they had finally solved the problem. Belle crossed her arms and stared at me. She waited for me to beg. She waited for me to apologize. She waited for me to break. She thought this was the moment when I would finally accept the role they had given me in the family. The role where my job was to stay quiet, pay bills, fix problems, and never complain. I did not do any of that. I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out a small brass key. I placed it gently on the table, right between the turkey platter and the mashed potatoes bowl. Then I said, calm and low, that if that was how she wanted it, then they had 60 seconds. The clapping stopped like someone cut the sound off. Belle blinked. Her face shifted from victory to confusion. She asked what I meant. I did not answer her right away. Instead, I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. 3 hours earlier, I had set up a video call. I had planned it carefully. I had checked the signal. I made sure my phone was fully charged. I had rehearsed what I would say, even though my hands shook when I practiced. Now I pressed the button. The screen lit up. Maya appeared. Maya had been my roommate in college. We met during freshman year and stayed close even after graduation. She went to law school. I went back to the ranch. She worked hard, passed the bar, and built a career. Now she was a real estate attorney at Peterson and Walsh, and she had been practicing property law for 12 years. On the screen, she looked serious and professional. Her hair was neat. Her voice was steady. She greeted everyone and said she was legal counsel for Marcus Chun. She also told everyone that the conversation was being recorded for legal reasons and that everyone was being notified. The room went quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. It felt sharp. It felt like fear was starting to wake up. Donovan stood up so fast his napkin fell onto the floor. Donovan was Belle's husband. He always acted confident, always acted like he knew what was best for everyone. He loved using big words and giving advice nobody asked for. Now he pointed at my phone and said we could not record them. He said it was private property. He said it was their house. I looked at him and spoke slowly. I told him it was not. Then I slid a thick manila envelope across the table. It landed beside the green bean casserole dish. I opened the envelope carefully. I did not rush. I wanted every movement to feel clear and final. Then I pulled out the deed. I held it up for a second, just long enough for them to recognize the shape and the official look of it. Then I set on the table where everyone could see. I told them the property was 467 acres. It included the main house, the barn, and 3 outbuildings. I told them it had been transferred to me 9 years earlier by my grandmother, Rose Chun. I told them I was the only legal owner of the ranch. I told them the deed was registered with Mercer County and had been registered since October 14th, 2014. Nobody spoke. For a few seconds, the room was completely still. Even the forks stopped moving. My father's face changed fast. The color left his cheeks. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. He whispered that it was impossible. My mother's wine glass slipped in her hand. She almost dropped it. She caught it at the last second, but her fingers were shaking. She stared at me and asked if Rose really left it to me. I said yes. I said the transfer was done 6 months before Grandma died. I said it was registered, notarized, and filed with the county clerk. Then I looked straight at my parents. I told them they already knew. I reminded them about Grandma's lawyer, Richard Morrison. He worked at Morrison and Associates. He met them at the funeral. He told them about the transfer. He gave them copies of the papers. He explained everything. I told them they promised to tell me when the time was right. I told them they never did. My mother started crying. Those neat, practiced tears she could switch on whenever she wanted sympathy. But something about her face showed panic too, like she realized she could not talk her way out of this. She started to say that they were going to do something. I asked what they were going to do. Then I answered for her. I said they were going to sell it out from under me. I said, and this part came out like ice that they already tried. Belle lunged forward. She reached across the table for the deed like she could grab it and erase what it said. I pulled it back. I told her it was only a copy. I told her the original was in a fireproof safe at Peterson and Walsh. I told her there was also 9 years of documentation stored there. Belle screamed that it was fake. She demanded that my parents tell her it was fake. She demanded they tell her it was a sick joke. My parents did not look at her. They stared at their plates. They stared at the tablecloth. They stared at the food like it was suddenly the most interesting thing in the world. Belle begged them to speak. Finally, my father whispered the truth. He said it was real. Belle's mouth fell open. Her eyes moved between my parents and me as if she could not decide who was lying. She asked if they knew the whole time. I said yes. For 9 years they knew. Then I took a breath. I told them I was going to explain why this was happening and how we got here, because none of this started today. Today was only the moment it finally came into the light. I told them I had lived on the ranch for 11 years total. I moved back after college because Grandma Rose got sick. She was diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer. It was not a small problem. It was not something you ignore. It changed everything. She needed help. The ranch needed someone who cared. The house needed meals and medicine and clean sheets. The land needed someone to check fences, handle repairs, and keep the place from falling apart. My parents lived 2 hours away in Spokane. They did not want to uproot their lives. Belle lived in Seattle, chasing opportunities. She called it building a future. In real life, it often meant switching between retail jobs and messy relationships and always needing money. I was 23, just out of Washington State with a degree in agricultural business. I had a job offer at a seed company. It was a stable job. It was a real start. I turned it down and moved home. My mother told me it would be temporary. She said it was just until Grandma got better. Grandma did not get better. 14 months later, on November 3rd, 2014, she died. I was 24. I was sitting beside her hospital bed when her breathing slowed, stopped, and never started again. I watched the moment her body went quiet. I felt like the world lost its center. At the funeral, Richard Morrison pulled my parents aside. He was 62 then. He had practiced law in Mercer County for 37 years. He knew everyone. Everyone knew him. He spoke with that calm voice people trust. I saw him talking to my parents. I saw my mother cover her mouth. I saw my father nod with a serious look. Then my parents came back to me and said Grandma left some legal things to sort out. Mom said it was estate stuff and they would handle it. I asked what kind of legal stuff. They told me not to worry. They told me I had enough to deal with. I believed them. For 9 years, I believed them. The first clear problem happened 2 months after the funeral. I was at the kitchen table going through bills. The property tax notice arrived. It said $4,200 for the year. I remember the number because my stomach tightened when I saw it. It was a big amount for me at the time. My father took the bill from my hand and said he would handle it. I asked if he was sure because it was a lot. He told me it was their house and their responsibility. He told me I had done enough taking care of Grandma. He said they would handle the finances. He said our house. That phrase should have made me question everything. But I was grieving. I was tired. I wanted to trust my parents. So I let it go. My father never paid the taxes. 3 months later, a notice came from the county. It said the taxes were overdue. It said penalties were adding up. It said there were 10 days left before they put a lien on the property. I panicked and called Dad. I asked if he paid the taxes. He sounded surprised, then annoyed, then embarrassed. He admitted he forgot. Then he asked if I could cover it. He said he would pay me back. I paid it. It was $4,600 with penalties. He never paid me back. That became the pattern. 6 months after Grandma died, the water pump failed. Not a small leak. Not a little issue. It failed completely. No water in the house. No water in the barn. No water anywhere. I called the plumber, Terry Walsh from Walsh Brothers Plumbing. He had been in business for 20 years. He looked at the problem and said the pump was buried deep and it was a big job. The estimate was about $3,200. I called Dad and told him. He sighed and asked how much. When I said the number, the phone went quiet. Then he said they did not have that kind of money right then. He asked if I could front it and they would figure out how to pay me back. I told him I did not have $3,200. He reminded me I was working. He called it a ranch hand job, like it was nothing. I told him I made $17 an hour. He told me to put it on a credit card. He said they were good for it. So I did. It took me 8 months to pay off that credit card. My parents did not pay $1. After that, it was like they learned they could always push the costs onto me. The problems grew bigger. Year 2, Belle got divorced from her first husband. She called crying and said she needed a lawyer. She said she only needed $5,000 to get started. She promised she would pay me back when the settlement came through. I gave her $5,000. Her settlement later was $85,000. She bought a new car and went to Hawaii. I got a short text that said thanks for the help. Year 3, the roof needed replacing. The estimate was $14,000. My father said they would handle it eventually. They did not. A leak started in the guest bedroom. Then another leak showed up in the master bedroom. Then water stains appeared in the kitchen ceiling. I could not let the house rot. So I got a home equity line of credit and paid for the roof myself. Year 4, Belle's credit card debt exploded. She maxed out 3 cards. Around $12,000. She begged. She said if she did not pay, they would sue her. She said, please, I am your sister. I consolidated her debt onto my credit. It took me 3 years to pay it off. Year 5, property taxes again. Then septic system repairs. Then Belle's car repairs. Then mom's medical bills. Then more property problems. Then more sudden emergencies. Every time, they said it was their house. Every time, they said they were short on money. Every time I paid. By year 9, I finally started tracking everything because something inside me had started to crack. I made a spreadsheet. I wrote down every expense, every date, every amount, every time someone promised to pay me back, every time they did not. The total reached $127,340. Not $1 was repaid. I want to be clear about what that does to a person. It does not only drain your money, it drains your trust. It drains your energy. It drains your ability to believe your own feelings. Because for years I told myself I was helping. I told myself I was being a good son, a good brother, a good person, and they encouraged that story because it kept the system working. The breaking point started 3 months before that Thanksgiving dinner. I was in town buying supplies when I heard Belle talking at the hardware store. She was near the shelves, talking like she owned the place, like she was in charge. She was speaking to Janet Mills, the owner of Mills Hardware. Janet had run that store for 43 years. She knew everybody, and everybody trusted her. Belle said they were selling the ranch. She said the ranch had been in the family forever, but they needed cash. She said developers were offering about $1.2 million. I stopped walking. My body froze. My heart felt like it dropped into my stomach. Janet said my parents must be relieved. Belle laughed and said my parents did not know yet. She said they were handling negotiations. She said Donovan was taking care of everything. I felt sick. I walked around the aisle until I could see her face. I said her name. Belle jumped. She actually jumped like she got caught stealing. She tried to smile and act casual. She tried to explain it away. I asked her directly who she was selling the property to. She told me it was not my concern. She grabbed her cart and rushed away like she could outrun the question. That night I called Maya. I told her I needed a lawyer. She asked what kind. I said property law. I said someone who could pull records and tell me what was happening. I told her everything. 9 years of expenses. The missing deed. Belle talking about selling. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked me a simple question. She asked if I ever actually saw the deed. I said no. I said my parents told me they would handle the estate stuff. Maya told me that was a massive red flag. She told me to give her 24 hours because she was going to pull county records. The next night, she called me back at 11:47 p.m. She told me I owned the ranch. I asked how that was possible. She said it was public record. The deed was filed on October 14th, 2014. The transfer was from Rose Chun to Marcus Chun. It was legal. It was notarized. It was recorded. It was real. She even mentioned there was a note in the filing, something like to my grandson who loves the land. I had to sit down. I remember my legs going weak. I remember staring at the wall like it might start making sense if I stared long enough. I asked why nobody told me. Maya said that was the real question. I hired her officially the next day. I paid her $5,000 as a retainer, and it was worth it. She told me what we needed to do. We needed to document everything. Every conversation. Every expense. Every lie. We needed proof of what they were planning. Because if Belle was talking to developers about property she did not own, that was fraud. If Donovan accepted money tied to a sale that could not happen, that could become a federal case. Hearing those words made me feel dizzy. My own family. For the next 3 months, I documented everything. I installed a recording app on my phone. Washington is a one-party consent state, which means I could legally record conversations I was part of. So I recorded every family dinner. I recorded phone calls. I recorded every time they said our house, or when we sell, or we need money. I did not record because I wanted revenge. I recorded because I needed truth in a world where my own family kept rewriting reality. In October, Belle and Donovan pushed harder. One night, I stepped outside. I told them I was going to get air. I stood in the dark and heard them talking on the porch. They did not know I was close enough to hear. Donovan asked Belle how much she told the developer. Belle said $1.2 million. She also said they actually offered $1.3 million, but she wanted room to negotiate. Donovan asked if my parents were okay with it. Belle said they did not have a choice because they were broke. Donovan asked what about Marcus. Belle laughed. She said I had been living there rent-free for years. She said they would give me something like $50,000 and tell me it was my share. $50,000 out of more than $1 million. She also said I did not pay for any of it, and they did. I stood there in the dark and listened to them plan to steal my property and hand me leftovers like I should feel grateful. That night, I called Maya and told her we would do it Thanksgiving. I said Thanksgiving would be the day. November became preparation. Maya drafted eviction notices. Formal, legal, tight, and clear. I compiled the spreadsheet again, making sure every expense had proof attached. I gathered recordings. I chose the strongest ones. I had them transcribed. I marked the dates and times. I also called Richard Morrison. He was retired, but he remembered everything. He told me my parents promised they would tell me about the deed. He said Rose wanted me to know, but she died before she could say it herself. He said he gave my parents copies of everything at the funeral. They told him they would handle it. He admitted he assumed they did. He admitted he should have followed up. He apologized. I asked him for a written statement about what he told my parents at the funeral. He said yes and promised to send it to Maya. Then Maya discovered something else. Donovan accepted a deposit from the developer. $25,000. It went into an escrow account tied to the sale. But Donovan was not the owner. He could not legally accept money for selling property he did not own. That was wire fraud, the kind of crime that federal investigators take seriously. Maya filed a formal complaint. A few days before Thanksgiving, a special agent called. Her name was Laura Mendez. She had been with the Bureau for 14 years and worked in white-collar crime, including real estate fraud. She told me they opened an investigation into Donovan Pierce. She said if the allegations were true, he committed multiple federal crimes. She also warned me something important. She warned me that this could destroy my family. I told her my family was already destroyed. They just did not know it yet. Thanksgiving Day arrived. November 23rd, 2023. I showed up at 4 p.m. with a bottle of wine, a pumpkin pie, and a briefcase full of documents. I walked into the house with a calm face, but my stomach felt like it was full of stones. Dinner started tense. Belle made comments about freeloaders and people who do not contribute. Mom sighed about how expensive everything was. Dad barely looked at me. Then at 6:47 p.m., right after he finished the turkey, Belle stood up. She announced they needed to talk about something as a family. My mother asked what it was in that sweet voice she used when she wanted to seem kind. Belle said she and Donovan had been working on a solution to their financial problems. She said they had been talking to a developer named Cascade Properties and that the developer wanted to buy the ranch. My mother gasped. My father looked shocked, but now I knew it was acting. He was too controlled, too calm behind the surprise. Belle said the offer was $1.3 million. She said they would split it 5 ways. I asked 5 ways with who? Belle listed me, herself, Paige, Mom, and Dad. Paige was not even there, but Belle said Paige would still get her share. Belle said this would solve everything. Mom and Dad could retire. I could finally buy my own place. Everyone would win. I asked Belle if she mentioned the offer to anyone else. She asked who. I asked if she mentioned it to the actual owner. Belle laughed and said Mom and Dad own the place. I asked if they did. My father stood up and told me not to start. I asked what he meant by start. I said I was only asking basic questions like who actually held the deed. Mom said it was the family home and Grandma left it to them. I asked if she did. Belle snapped that I was being difficult. She said it was a family decision. I agreed. I said it was a family decision. Then I told her we should talk about it as a family, with facts. That is when Belle threw the wine on me. That is when she screamed that I had until sunrise to leave. That is when my parents clapped. And that is when I placed the key on the table and gave them 60 seconds. Now, back in that moment with Maya on the screen, I told everyone to listen carefully. I repeated that the conversation was being recorded and everyone was notified. I placed a copy of the deed on the table so everyone could see. I repeated the date of the transfer and the county record. Then I looked at my parents and reminded them Richard Morrison told them at the funeral and gave them copies. I told them they promised to tell me, and they never did. My mother cried and said they were trying to protect. I asked protect what? I said protect their access to my property. My father finally spoke louder. He tried to claim Grandma was old and confused. He tried to claim she did not understand what she was doing. I answered that she had lawyers present. She also had a medical evaluation. A gerontologist named Dr. Patricia Wong confirmed her mental competency in writing. She knew what she was doing. Then I pulled out my laptop. I connected it to the television. I told them I wanted to show them something. I called it the family ledger. A spreadsheet filled the screen. Rows and rows. Dates. Costs. Notes. I explained it was every dollar I spent on the property over 9 years while they treated it like it belonged to them. The numbers scrolled and the room felt like it got smaller. Property taxes. Water pump. Storm damage. Tree removal. Belle's divorce lawyer. More taxes. Septic repairs. Roof replacement. Belle's credit card debt. More repairs. More bills. More emergencies. At the bottom, the total was $127,340. Donovan whispered something under his breath. Dad said they did not ask me to pay for all that. I told him they did not need to ask because they complained and I fixed things because I believed I was helping keep my parents safe. My mother sobbed and said I was helping and they were grateful. I laughed, but it was not happy. It was bitter. I pointed at the wine stain on my shirt and reminded her what happened 5 minutes earlier. Belle screamed that I set them up and manipulated them. I told her I gave them chances. I told her I asked questions. I told her they lied. Then I played recordings. I played Belle's voice from family dinner 3 weeks earlier. She called the house my parents' house and said I lived there like a freeloader. She said I never contributed and I would be lucky if they gave me anything when they sold. I looked at her and said she called me a freeloader on my own property. Then I played my mother's voice from a phone call. She said they could not tell me about the deed because if I knew, I would kick them out. She said it was their home and they deserved to stay. Then I played my father's voice from a porch conversation. He said the ranch should have been theirs and Rose made a mistake leaving it to me. He said I did not appreciate it like they did. The room stayed silent, except for their own voices playing back to them. Then I took 2 more envelopes from my briefcase. I placed them in front of my parents. I told them the first one was a formal eviction notice. I told them they had 30 days to move out. I told them the notice was filed with the county that morning and it was legally binding. My mother gasped and asked if I was kicking them out. I reminded her Belle told me I had until sunrise. I said I was giving them 30 days, which was generous. My father's voice cracked. He called it cruel. He reminded me they were my parents. I told him parents do not steal from their children. He tried to claim they never stole anything. I told him they stole 9 years. They stole over $100,000. They stole my trust. Belle stood up shaking. She called me ungrateful and tried to keep insulting me, but I cut her off. I listed what I paid for. Her divorce, her credit card debt, her car repairs, groceries, emergency costs. Then I reminded her she planned to sell my land and give me $50,000 like it was charity. Donovan went pale. I told him I heard him and Belle on the porch. I told him the date. I told him the exact plan. Then I looked at him and told him to explain the deposit. Belle asked what deposit. I said Donovan accepted $25,000 from Cascade Properties as a deposit against the sale of the ranch. Belle looked confused at first. She thought it meant the developer was serious. Then I explained slowly that he accepted money for property he did not own, which was fraud. Maya's voice came through the phone. She warned Donovan that a complaint was filed with the FBI. She said Special Agent Laura Mendez was investigating. She told him to contact an attorney immediately. Donovan grabbed Belle's arm and told her they needed to leave. Belle screamed at him not to walk away from her, but Donovan pulled harder. He said they needed to call a lawyer. Belle turned back toward me and screamed that it was not over. I told her it was over. I told her they tried to commit fraud. I told her the FBI investigation was real. I told her the options were simple now. Cooperate or face prison. Belle yelled that I was bluffing. I held up another document and said it was my formal statement to the FBI, and it included recordings, financial records, and evidence of their attempted fraud. Donovan dragged Belle toward the door. Belle kept screaming threats. She said they would sue. Then the front door slammed so hard a family photo fell off the wall and shattered. Glass broke on the floor like punctuation. My parents stayed at the table. They looked small, destroyed, like the world finally stopped working for them. My father whispered one question. He asked why I went this far. I looked down at the wine stains spreading across my chest. I looked at the cold turkey on the table. I looked at the faces of people who treated me like a wallet with legs. Then I answered him. I told him I went this far because they poured wine on me and called it love. Because they used me for years and acted like it was normal. Because they never stopped and never planned to stop. My mother begged to talk. I told her we were talking right then, and the answer was 30 days. I told her if they were not out by December 23rd, the sheriff would remove them. My father whispered again that it was their home. I picked up the deed and told him it was mine. I reminded him it had been mine for 9 years. I told him they simply hid the truth and hoped I would never learn it. They left 3 days later. They did not wait the full 30 days. They packed their things and moved to Spokane to stay with my father's brother. I helped them load the truck. I did not yell. I did not insult them. I did not fight. I carried boxes. I carried furniture. I did quiet work the way I always did. When the truck was full, my father rolled down the window and told me I would regret this. I told him maybe, but at least it would be my choice. The investigation took 4 months. Donovan was charged with wire fraud and attempted theft by deception. He pleaded guilty to avoid trial. He was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. He was ordered to return the $25,000 deposit plus penalties. Belle filed for divorce 6 months later. A year after that Thanksgiving, I sat on the porch and watched the driveway while the evening light fell across the fields. Then Maya drove up. She got out of her car and smiled like she was bringing good news. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $25,000. It was restitution from Donovan's case. The court ordered him to repay what he took, plus interest. I stared at the check and felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Maya told me to buy something nice. I told her I would fix the barn roof. She laughed and said of course I would. My parents tried to reach out after that. They left voicemails. They sent emails. They sent letters saying they were sorry and wanted to reconcile. I did not respond. Belle sent a long letter blaming me for destroying the family. She called me cruel and vindictive. She wrote pages about how I always hated her and how I must be jealous. I read the first part and threw it away. Page called once crying. She said the family was falling apart. I told her the truth. I told her I did not tear anyone apart. They did that themselves. I just stopped holding the pieces together. 2 years after that Thanksgiving, I got approved for agricultural grants. I started a sustainable farming operation. For the first time in a decade, the ranch made a real profit. I hired 3 employees. I paid them well. I treated them with respect. I built something honest on land that had been used as a lie for years. I kept the brass key on my keychain. Not because it reminded me of being humiliated. Because it reminded me of the moment I finally drew a line. Then last month, I got a letter from Richard Morrison, Grandma's lawyer. He wrote that Grandma wanted me to know something. He said that when she transferred the property to me, she also wrote a letter. She asked him to give it to me when the time was right. He said he believed the time was right now. Inside his envelope was another envelope, smaller, with Grandma Rose's handwriting. I sat on the porch and opened it carefully. Her words hit me like warm light. She told me if I was reading the letter, then I knew the truth about the ranch. She told me she left it to me because I was the only one who loved the land for what it was, not what it could be sold for. She warned me my parents would be angry and Belle would feel betrayed. She predicted they would say she was confused or manipulated. She predicted they would say I did not deserve it. She told me not to listen. She reminded me I was the one who came home when she was dying. She said I was the one who stayed. She said I learned the land, the soil, the seasons. She said I asked about her childhood there and what the place meant. She said to everyone else it was only property, acres, dollars, and a future sale. But to me it was home. Then she warned me again. She said I had to protect the land, not just from developers and buyers, but also from family who would try to take it. She said they would use guilt. She said they would use obligation. She said they would use love as a weapon. She told me to be strong. She told me to be firm. She told me to be the guardian the land deserved. She ended the letter with love. I read her letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my wallet beside the deed. 3 years after that Thanksgiving dinner, I finally felt peace. The ranch was thriving. The debts were paid. The land was protected. And my family was somewhere else, living their own lives, making their own choices without my money and without my land. I still thought about Belle sometimes. I thought about the wine she threw. I thought about the way she screamed that I had until sunrise. She was right about one thing. Something ended at sunrise. Their ability to use me ended. Grandma Rose left me more than land. She left me permission. Permission to say no. Permission to protect what was mine. Permission to choose the land over people who would destroy it. When Belle poured wine on me and ordered me out, she thought she was winning. She thought she was pushing me down one more time. Instead, she handed me the perfect moment to stand up. They wanted me gone by sunrise. But before the next sunset, they were the ones packing and leaving. And the ranch stayed exactly where Grandma meant it to stay. In my hands, where it belonged.